So I finally got around to watching the newest episode of Goblin Slayer, and bro, this episode hit me like a truck in terms of feels. Like, holy crap. Like, seeing how the Goblin Slayer just straight up told Cowgirl, like, run. And at first glance, the reason why you think he's saying that is just because he wants to protect her. And that still is the reason. But it's very different from what we are used to when it comes to what Goblin Slayer does, how he operates. Usually, he can handle any situation. We have seen time and time again, even though he's pushed to the very limit, and he wouldn't have gotten as far if it wasn't for, the elf, the dwarf, and the lizard man helping him, we still know at the very least he is someone very skilled, and he's able to solve a lot of issues that face him. And it was the first time we've really ever seen, since the series began, that the Goblin Slayer outright admitted he could not handle it by himself. He needed help, and it's just really sad, or it just hits you in the chest when you see how the man just, he's like, run, you need to go, and the girl's like, I won't do that, I won't let you lose your home, because I know for a fact you're going to stay behind, and you're going to do anything you can to fight these goblins, even if you have to do it by yourself. I don't want you to have to be by yourself and all that. So she was willing to just be with him in his final moments if everything was going to go south. And it was just a very emotional moment. And so when the man realized that if he cannot defeat the goblins, everybody's going to die, seeing him go into the guild and talk to everyone, he goes up to a dude that obviously does not like him. The Lancer, he's a good dude. Deep down, he's a good dude. We know he is. And we do know that even though he has a complicated relationship with Goblin Slayer, he does respect him in some shape or form. And when you see him just like, I need your help, I have a request, everybody's like, whoa, Goblin Slayer seeking something. He's seeking, a request from someone. It's like, doesn't he operate alone? Even if he's been venturing with people, it's still very weird to see this man just walk up to people like that, because he's always a guy that's antisocial. He doesn't really communicate with people. He wants to really do most of his stuff by himself. He'll go off on his own and not really speak to anyone inside the guild hall, but everybody knows who he is, or, people make fun of him because of how he looks, or how he hunts down goblins, etc., etc. And seeing him just stand in front of the Lancer guy that obviously has been very conflicting, the relationship's very weird, and he's just like, please help me and all that. And, he's like, at first he's just shocked. He's in absolute shock that, Goblin Slayer's asking him of all people after how the relationship's been. And then all of a sudden, he's like, at the end of the day, we're adventurers. And so, where's the payment? And I know many, seeing that moment, were going to get very disgusted. They were probably very disgusted with him and everybody else in the hall requesting payment. But you gotta look at it from a different perspective, okay? Yes, we know how dangerous the situation is for the goblins rushing the farm village. We know what Goblin Slayer is true. We know he's not lying. We know it's very dangerous. We as the audience, we know. We know what danger he was facing and how bad it must be for him of all people to say that he needs help and has to go there and pretty much beg. But the point is with them asking for money, it wasn't really kind of them in the wrong. Because you gotta think about it like this. At the end of the day, adventurers, they are technically professionals. They are hired to do certain things, certain quests. Like, example, there's a quest to take down 100 goblins. 100 gold if you take down these 100 goblins and all that, okay? And obviously, them being adventurers, even though it's cool to go on an adventure, collect equipment, have stories with friends or whatever, saving the day, at the end of the day, adventurers do get rewards. They get money. They get stuff out of it. And so they can't just do a premium service that is really important for free. It sets a bad example for everyone. For the guild and every single adventurer, if they were just to say, hey man, sure, let's go slay some goblins for free, it's just gonna set a bad example. And so obviously, that is why they requested payment, because if he would have accepted it for free, then that would mean more people would come around and expect it for free, or other people that have goblin situations would expect it for free. So in a way, Lancer dude, he was actually looking out for Goblin Slayer, because even though Goblin Slayer, obviously, he doesn't care probably too much for payments or anything, let's just be real here, at the end of the day, though, he does need payments to be able to function as a person, to be able to repair his equipment, to be able to get objects or tools to be able to face goblins. So, technically, Lancer Bro was looking out for him, because we know for a fact Goblin Slayer would kill goblins without even getting payment. but he was looking out for him in that moment. So just good man on that part. I really like the message or just overall theme of that scene and how everybody started to stand up and actually wanting to help out the Goblin Slayer. It was also thanks to the Guild Girl for even setting anything into motion for allowing the Goblin Slayer to even have help in the first place. Because let's be real here. If she didn't come up and it's like, there's a request, if you beat one goblin, like every goblin you slay you get 1 gold, you will be able to make a profit, obviously people are going to jump in on that, because people know that goblins, people normally think of goblins as very weak. That's the common, way people view goblins in this world. But we know the truth. Even weak goblins are very dangerous depending on how they are or how they operate, and Goblin Slayer's made this very clear since the very beginning that you should never underestimate goblins. However, the point is Guild Girl was getting as much help as she possibly could for Goblin Slayer to be able to achieve what he wanted, and since technically he was the one doing, the request, like the quest putting it in, they were probably going to listen to him on how his plan was, because technically, he's the one that set this in motion in the first place, so everybody was going to be a-okay, and that's why the Guild Girl even went out of her way to allow pretty much anyone to be able to participate, because the Goblin Slayer was going to be able to lead the charge. So yeah, everything kind of lines up, and it doesn't really go against any of the other characters' personalities and how they've been set up since the very beginning, because we do know that the Guild Girl, she's an individual that does not like people just starting Goblin quest right out the gate. For instance, if you're a new adventurer and you're wanting to take on goblins because you think they're weak, she's gonna look at you and she's gonna like, you really shouldn't do that or whatever. The reason why she didn't do that this time is because, like I said, Goblin Slayer was leading the charge. Now, backing up for a second, okay? Let's talk about the situation at the village, okay? Once everybody finally said, let's do this and all that, and everybody's joining in, like, oh, he saved my town, or, he's a guy that's a talk of the entire guild or whatever, because of just how he is, or how he's always coming in and all that. Regardless of how people feel about him, they know that he's very obsessed with goblins, and that usually if he has information on goblins, you probably can trust him on that regard. So everybody did not just, brush it away and think it wasn't nothing in the first place. So I do like how everything in the end did turn out all right. Now, when it came to the battle scenes, okay, let's talk about that. So, the later half of the episode, when the action really started to happen, everything was going fine. It's going fine, actually. It's very jarring, but it's, going fine because the Goblin Slayer is just so skilled in fighting goblins. We just see, even though he wasn't able to handle the situation by himself, he still knows what they're planning to do. For instance, the riders with the wolves coming in, to how they were willing to use meat shields, which, holy crap, let's talk about that for a second. I honestly had, images in my mind of certain scenes that happen in the latest volume of Overlord. If you have read the latest light novel volume of Overlord, then you know what I'm talking about. Just seeing the meat shields of the women on the shields and all that, and seeing how the goblins are just, having them like banners or whatever, like war flags, it's pretty disturbing. And I'm just like, holy crap, that's dark. That's some pretty dark stuff. But in those times and stuff like this actually does happen. People used, your own against you, either for a way to demoralize you or just to be able to shield themselves where you wouldn't damage them. And sometimes in wars and stuff, they use children like that. And it's disgusting to think, but that's literally some tactics that were used in the past. So, yeah, I do find it interesting how they were willing to show something like that, even though it was obviously there were some censors here and there. I am very surprised that they showed as much as they did with that scene, and you know what? I'm pretty surprised. I mean, this series has already shown that it's not willing to censor a lot of things, but I thought they would probably censor something like that, of all things. So, anyways, everything was pretty much getting handled until the big boys started coming in. We had hobgoblins and 2 goblin champions, and we've already seen how crazy goblin champions are and hobgoblins. We've seen it already throughout the various arcs that we've already gotten for Goblin Slayer's anime, and we know that they're really no joke whatsoever. You shouldn't underestimate a hobgoblin or even a goblin champion, especially a goblin champion, and there's 2 Goblin champions, so it's not really good odds, honestly. I mean, even though they have a lot of adventurers there, it's still pretty bad, and it does make a lot of sense now why the Goblin Slayer was like, I need help, because there's no way in hell he was going to be able to take on, 2 goblin champions and a bunch of hobgoblins with 100+ regular goblins. There's just no way he would have been able to do that, because he pushed himself so hard just to be able to fight a champion in the first place. So, yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. Now, speaking of champions, hobgoblins, and all that, I'm very curious about the Goblin Lord, or Goblin King. What I'm curious about is if the Goblin Lord is actually strong or not. Because I'm under the assumption by the way this episode is depicting the Goblin Lord, is that the Goblin Lord isn't really strong. Like, he's obviously massive, because, I mean, he's way bigger than the regular goblin. I could assume that he's probably around the height, or a little bit higher than maybe a hobgoblin. He might be a little bit smaller than a goblin champion, but he is a Goblin Lord. And even though he is a Goblin Lord, some kings can't fight, obviously. Sometimes they're just all, you know, about the brain and they can't fight, but I really doubt a goblin that was able to rise up the ranks and become a Goblin Lord would not be able to fight back and have his own way of fighting. And I'm very curious to see if he's actually, in fact, stronger than a Goblin Champion or a Hobgoblin. I mean, I'm assuming he's stronger than a Hobgoblin. I just don't know if he's stronger than a Champion. That's one big thing I am very curious about, and I'm wondering if the Goblin Slayer is going to be okay, because he's technically by himself, and I do wonder if he's going to be able to take down this opponent by himself with, you know, no one really backing him up, unless someone does pop up to save him. I'm just curious, because a Goblin Lord sounds pretty ridiculous, but I think it's the best way to really give us a final boss for this season of Goblin Slayer, which, let's talk about that. We're quickly approaching the finale of Goblin Slayer, and I believe it's only going to have 12 episodes or 13 episodes. I don't believe this is going to be a 2-course series lasting into, you know, Winter of Anime 2019, but even then, I think, you know, fighting a Goblin Lord is a good stopping point for the anime, because, I mean, it's kind of like we rose up the ranks. You know, we started off with regular goblins, and then we started fighting hobgoblins, and then we got to see goblin champions, or an ogre, and then now we're seeing a Goblin Lord. It makes sense to kind of conclude the series with this opponent, because it's kind of like the pinnacle of what goblins are really about, unless there's something else that appears that's just way stronger than a Goblin Lord, which I'm assuming does in the manga, since the manga is still ongoing. But yeah, a very entertaining episode. I love the way the direction of just the entire guild scene was, and the action scene. I'm curious to see what this Goblin Lord is capable of, and how much of a struggle it's going to be for Goblin Slayer to bring him down. So with that, I want to end this video there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.